to attend our workshop today. Our workshop today is about linguistic theory and English speaking. And I think that is a very, very good opportunity for all of us teachers have a chance to discuss, to share, to exchange our experience about in studying and learning English and teaching English. And first of all, I would like to introduce to all of you our linguistic guests. Okay, I would like to introduce Mr. Linda Bell. Yeah, she is from the USA.
Welcome.
Next, I would like to introduce Mr. Cynthia Watson.
I don't know her. Yes.
In the foreign language department, I would like to introduce Mr. Jambuka, our dean, the dean of our department. All teachers in our department and many teachers from high school around our province to be here today.
Very special.
In our workshop today, we have about 3 presentations, but we take priorities for our American teachers. We spend more time for them to talk about their experience in teaching and in learning English. Okay, if we have, and I hope that we will have very, very interesting discussion after their presentation. Okay, so that's all for my introduction. Now it's time. I would like to invite Ms. Linda Bell to do your presentation. Okay, and is your presentation here.
Miss Wei, are you going to present?
Yes.
Is it okay?
So, my name is Linda Bell, and I have been teaching ESL and EFL, English as a Foreign Language, for 40 years. I taught in Greece, in Europe, for 8 years, and I taught students there who were learning English, and I also taught at the university there in the English faculty for 2 years. Then I returned to the United States, and I got a doctorate in linguistics, and I have been teaching at CUNY City University in New York for the last 30 years. I also teach in a master's program at the New School University, which is also in New York City. And actually I'm teaching 2 classes now. I took 1 week off, and I had 1 week off, teaching about learner assessment, teachers learning about how to do assessment of students, including testing and also informal assessment, classroom assessment. And I'm also teaching what we call the teaching practicum, which means that the teachers are finishing the program and they go out and they teach in different places, and I observe them and give them feedback about their teaching. I also teach TOEFL prep. I think you know about the TOEFL exams. Yes, of course. And
Very
I've been
difficult.
teaching that for many years. Yeah. Very difficult exam now.
Very
Yeah.
difficult.
Yeah. I know now that more students here are taking the IELTS.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even in the United States, because the TOEFL is so difficult.
Yes.
Yeah, one way that we solve that problem in the United States is that the required scores are not that high. So to enter a bachelor's program, students only need 60 or 61 on the TOEFL at the City University of New York. So that's only half, if you know. The top score is 120.
Yes.
So that's how we solve the problem of the test being so difficult. Yeah. But anyway, okay, so in this presentation, you have right in front of you booklet, right? Change it. Change it, yeah. Do we have it here?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
You have
Yeah, you changed it, yeah, because I know you have it there too, so you can look up there, you can look down here. Yeah. Yeah, okay, so Cindy and I talked about reading, and we want to talk today about reading and vocabulary. So, here are some free reading tasks that we'll talk about right from the beginning. So a self-assessment, I mean, this could be for you, for your students, is why is reading an important skill to develop? List 3 reasons.
So can you do that now?
Yeah. Can you tell me 3 reasons why reading is an important skill to develop? So we can be interactive.
3 people have reason each.
Yes.
I think reading is extremely important skill because if someone read well, he or she can improve his or her ability of using vocabulary, a wide range of using vocabulary, as well as the meaning or getting the unique information from the reading.
Yes. Yes.
So honestly, always presenting the skills, really one of the way the student receive knowledge. They apply how to use the structure, they learn from grammar, and how to use vocabulary.
Right.
And reading.
Yes, that's a good point, because you mentioned vocabulary. You also get a lot of grammar from reading, right? Because you come across new structures when you read, and you have to understand them, right? So that's also true. Any other?
And I think most information is performed in written text. Yeah, so
Exactly.
if you want to get information, you have to read.
Yeah.
So reading skill.
Especially nowadays, right? Because we have electronic devices where we read information, yeah. And now we even have fiction on e-readers and, right? So we read also for pleasure, right? Yeah. Okay. So all of you now are very good at reading English, right? So how has it helped you? It's helped you in your job, I know that, right, in your position. How else? How has it enriched your life, made your life richer? So one way you get a lot of information, right, from the internet, from informational texts, right?
Yeah, I think that it enrich our life because when you read, sometimes read book or read newspaper or read some text, so we can know a lot of information outside
Right.
these the societies or about education. So I think that enrich my life.
Right, so I mean, really what you're saying is professional development, right? Because you're a professor here, and so you can read about other methodology, other tests, right, other ways to learn, right?
In many fields.
In many different fields, exactly, right. And also, does anybody read for pleasure? Do you read novels? Yeah.
Newspapers.
Có.
For relaxing, right? Exactly, it's very relaxing.
I think 80% the information in the world translated into English. So you know the ways of reading information from in English. I think it's very important.
Yeah,
And
so
most
that's-
of you to know the ways of getting the knowledge, the modern technology from in over the world. Because
Right,
that I think is enrich your life when you're reading a lot.
so that's very good. So it's not only reading, but it's reading English, because so much information is conveyed through English, right? Especially through the internet. Okay? Now, reading speed. What do you think about that, reading speed?
Okay.
Yeah. Is that important? Yeah. Why? Why is that important?
So just gets the man's idea.
So at the very basic level, reading speed is important to understand, right? Because if you read one word at a time, you can't really understand the text, right? So at the very basic level, you need to be able to read at a certain speed to understand the text, to process the information. But then at a higher level, you need reading speed. I mentioned the TOEFL, that's a timed test, right? And actually the statistics that ETS, that's the Education Testing Service, that's the company that makes TOEFL, that created TOEFL, they say that the reading is the most difficult part of the test. And one of the main reasons that it is the most difficult part is because of the time. Students do not have enough time to finish. Yeah, to finish reading the text, yeah. And the second reason, I believe, is because they have 8 different types of questions. And some of the questions are very difficult. They're asked to organize the information from the text in charts, and you've seen that in diagrams, and that's very, very difficult. And also to put sentences in a particular place in the text. And that's also very difficult, because you have to understand the text, which is many paragraphs, very well to understand where this sentence best fits. Yeah, it's very difficult. So that's something that maybe you have to work on in your classes, right? We have a lot of books on timed readings. They're actually called timed readings in different areas. We have them in social studies, in science, but you can do that by timing your students, right? Having them read the text once and then read it again, right? Okay, so what reading materials do you use with your class now? Can you tell me some?
Interaction 1, 2, mosaic 1.
So Mosaic has more reading in it, right? Than interactions, doesn't it? Yeah. Mosaic is higher level. Mosaic is higher level, right?
Yes.
And there's more than one book in the series, right? Do you use 3 books or how many books do you use? 2.
No. Silver version. Silver. Silver version.
Yeah. So there's Mosaic 1 and Mosaic 2. Okay, so you use both of those. And is that a good book?
It's okay.
It's okay.
Not really.
Not really. What's wrong with it? Is it not so interesting?
Some topic is some topics is too high.
Too high.
Too difficult.
Too difficult.
Some inference, some metaphor, and some
Yeah.
some sentence metaphor and implies, so students can understand.
And that's another thing that ETS says, that metaphor and inference are the most difficult parts of the reading. Inference is very difficult. Okay, so I'm glad you mentioned that. So do you have any strategies that you use for reading? Skimming. What do you use skimming for?
For information, for
Main idea, right? Yeah, main idea. And scanning for details, more specific information,
some
right?
keywords.
And also keywords. And part of the point with the keywords is that how are they used, right, in this particular sentence, right? Because sometimes the word is used in a special way, an unfamiliar way, I can say, right? That's true in most, of course, that. Okay. What rewards do you give students for improving their reading proficiency?
Marks.
Marks.
This I usually use candy.
But you know, sometimes they don't show the improvement, but they still get points.
Because you need to do that, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I myself, I think that candy is
vocabulary test.
Can summarize the main ideas of the text. Can summarize. If my student can summarize the main ideas of the text.
Tell the story. Tell the story.
Retell in, right, so in speaking or in writing?
Maybe both.
Maybe both, yeah. Yeah, that's very, very important in speaking and in writing. And that is a skill that's required in TOEFL also. You know that, right? Preparation for American universities. And that, of course, makes perfect sense because if you really understand the text, then you can put it in your own words, right? You can explain either by speaking or by writing. Yeah, very important.
Which one is better, sort of,
I think summary writing and summarizing and speaking are both very, very important. So I suppose I would say that if the text is easier, then they can summarize it and speak. If it's more difficult, then they need to take the time to summarize it in writing. But, you know, you might try with the same text, the speaking and the writing, and see how that goes. You know, there's a book called Stories We Brought With Us. It's an old book and it's a low intermediate level, but they have two versions of the same story.
So even students and even colleagues, they are better in writing.
They are better at writing than speaking. So then it's a good idea to practice summarizing. And I would start with simpler versions of a story or simpler stories or simpler articles, right? So there are some websites that you can go to where you can measure, you can get the same text in low level and high level. Do you know some of those websites? Okay, we can show them that. I'll attribute it. Yeah. And so you can first have them summarize the easier version, the lower level, and then later the higher level, and that would be good practice. So you add vocabulary, more difficult structures the next time. Yeah, I would suggest you do a lot of that because that probably is a big problem in Vietnam, speaking, right?
Yes.
You don't have enough opportunities to speak, but of course you can stay home and read, right? Yeah, I had a Vietnamese student in my TOEFL class. It just ended before I came here, and she had a lot of difficulty speaking. In this class, we emphasize listening and speaking, and now when I teach it again in April, we will emphasize the reading and writing portions. And it was very difficult for her to summarize in the class. Yeah, I mean, she tried very hard, and sometimes she couldn't get the main idea from the listening. And then when she tried to summarize it, she had a lot of difficulty finding the right words, and also the fluency, right, where she could say it in a few sentences and it would be very clear. Yeah, I remember that. Okay, so this is something from the literature. David Newman, maybe you have read some of his books. He's written many books on methodology and teacher training, and he says authentic and challenging text, but I really believe you have to build to those texts. Oral reading of the text by the teacher, so that's something that Cynthia's going to explain to you in a minute, and provide students with a rhetorical and topical framework for processing. So rhetorical framework is how it's organized, right? How the text is organized. And topical is the theme. So you mentioned in Mosaic that a lot of the topics or the themes are difficult. So maybe you can find some simpler texts that tell you about that topic or theme before they read a more difficult one. Things on the internet. And then students interacting with the text and with each other. Okay, so we're going to talk a little more about that later, different ways to do that. And, I mean, of course, they can tell each other the story, but I want to introduce some other ways to do that. And direct analysis of the text. So this is close to what we now call a close reading of the text, which means you look for, and I think you know how to do that, you look for the exact answer to the question at every step of the way in the text, right? And this is something I want to talk about also. This one and this one in a few minutes. Frequently involves a transfer of information from text to a visual or diagrammatic representation. I want to talk about that. Okay. Okay, so Cynthia wants to talk about shadow reading, right?
Yeah. I really want her to do the presentation, but shadow reading is one pre-reading exercise that you can do. It's actually not so difficult, but it is easy to, it helps the learner with pronunciation as well as with reading. So it's kind of a way for them to become familiar with the words and the vocabulary and also the grammatical structure and to develop some fluency. I don't know if they've got the meaning, but they're developing fluency first. So, but you work with them to develop meaning first and understanding. You take apart a long reading, start with a long reading, isolate a smaller part of the reading, record it, take it apart, look at it grammatically, look at the vocabulary, and then play. You can do that by brainstorming vocabulary, you can mind map, you can capture the main idea, you can talk about the text. And then what you can do is, this is too difficult to read, but you have the information there. So you audio or videotape a small section, small paragraph. You can do the whole thing and then isolate one small paragraph. So you have the students listen to it over and over again, and as they're listening, they're reading aloud and trying to match what the speaker says. So you're helping them develop some fluency in pronunciation as well as in reading. And then each time they listen to it, you lower the volume so that eventually they are reading it without the help. But they are imitating the intonation patterns, the thought groups, the reduction in stress that they hear on the tape. So it's helping them really kind of with pronunciation, but it's also helping them gain fluency in reading as well. It's kind of it's a process, it's a way to approach. The reading part, the speed part is very important also, as you said before, because especially not only the timed readings, but we're in the internet, we're in an information age. So every day, the amount of information that we take in from the internet is like 16 times what it was 10 years ago. So you've got to be able to read very quickly to get the information and put it together. And if they're on the test, they need to be able to read quickly, fluency in reading, because if they're on the test, if you have a sentence that's this long with 10 words in it, you've got to remember what's at the beginning when you get to the end of the sentence to put it together. So if you can go quickly, if you've got speed in reading, you can remember what was at the beginning, the subject of the sentence. But if it takes you a long time to read the sentence, you've forgotten what the sentence was about. So it's in processing at the sentence level as well as at the text level. You need the speed. And we say fluency in reading. We actually use that term, fluency in reading. So this kind of exercise, it seems a little like a drill, but it's a little bit more than that. It's helping students kind of get a rhythm in their reading. That they're not going word by word, but they're following the thought groups and the patterns of processing of a native speaker. So it's a good exercise to get them into it.
Right, because earlier I was talking about, you can't read word by word, you can't process, but then, as Cynthia said, on a higher level, you really need to process the thought groups within a complex sentence and then a complex reading. So you need to process that information so you can keep going with the understanding. You can't keep going back
in the program that she teaches in, we were teaching separate skills. So now in most programs, people don't teach reading, they don't teach separate skills. In most programs today. Most programs do integrated skills. So this is what you see on TOEFL, on the IELTS. All the tasks are integrated tasks. They don't teach separate skills in most places. So most curricula, the curriculum of most programs is more student learning outcomes in terms of proficiency level. Proficiency level. And that is determined by the Common European Framework or by IELTS proficiency scale. So you're looking at integrated tasks. But when I taught reading, we did something like timed readings, and I know that this is probably would be very popular here. That you have a chart. Each student has his or her own reading log, and we do timed readings, say 5 minutes out of the class. And you give them a reading, and when they're finished, you say start. When they're finished, you give them a time, and then they compute their time, and you put it on the wall. And you say, how fast did you read today? How fast here? But you don't just say how fast, you also say, look at your time on this day, what was the text? Look at your time on this day, what was the text? Why did your reading speed go down? Was the text more difficult? Was the vocabulary more difficult? Were you tired? Were you not interested? Were you thinking, were you texting? I mean, what were you doing? So there's an element of reflection in this process. And you're asking students to look at what they're doing to figure it out. It's not just the score. It's not just the score. It's got to be reflection. So a big part of teacher training is right now, a big part of student learning right now is reflection. So there's a whole lot, there are many studies on reflective practice today. Many studies look at reflective practice. So and self-assessment. Like the first, in the beginning when she first started, it's important to get students to do a self-assessment first, to get them thinking, to have a baseline data, so that when they finish, they've got other data to compare it to. So a lot of what's going on is reflective practice and self-assessment, because that's a key to learning. So, I'm looking at, when I went to the schools, I'm very impressed with all the teachers in the schools, really, it's fabulous what's happening in the schools. A key part that, the next step to what is happening in the schools is reflection. That it's kind of going deeper into the text. You've got to have the students talking about what they've gone over. There has to be, like in Ida's class on Sunday, they were talking about Robinson Crusoe. So, students gave a very good presentation, very informative, but it was surface. So, there's surface level comprehension, scanning and skimming only for details. But that's not necessarily learning. You walk out the door and you've forgotten everything. So a key element to it is reflection, and it's also going deeper level processing. And you've got to find a way to get people talking about it. It's not like, so the general question, you said, you answered, what do we read? What was the, why do we read? Or something like that. Yeah. She answered, why do we read? So the question is, in self-assessment, not why do we read, why do you read? Why do you read? Can you tell me?
What do you read?
Why do you read?
Why do you read? Sao em đọc nha?
You.
Yes.
Not we, but you.
Yes.
So surprised.
Information and then.
To get information?
For
What information do you need and why do you need it?
sometimes about the education.
Yeah.
Sometimes news and
Okay. Why do you